Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 to this, our reactions to the Brazilian Grand Prix. My God, we were expecting something. We thought from qualifying this morning that was something a little bit special, a little bit different. We thought the race might have more in store for us in that kind of department. And did it? Yes, it did. It delivered and then some. So before we get into all that, remember to like and subscribe. And also huge shout out to our members, Dakota, the Joyous James, Robin Myers, and Cinnamon Strudel. Let's get into this then. Lando Norris on pole position. George Russell is alongside him. Saying this now, it feels like this happened about 4 days ago, but it was only a few hours ago. Max Verstappen, of course, is dropped down to 17th place after the 5-place grid penalty for the engine change before the start of the weekend. Now, I said in the qualifying video, I would bet money that not all 20 cars start the race. And I was right, but only one of them missed out. I thought we'd have more than that, but it was Alex Albon out of the race due to the damage from qualifying. Franco Colapinto also crashed in qualifying, but he was able to take part in the race. Carlos Sainz crashed in qualifying. He's had a engine and a gearbox change. He's starting from the pit lane. Both Astons also crashed in qualifying. Both of them also starting the race in the positions they qualified, although a lot of work was taking place on Alonso's car before the start of the race on the grid. So it was a bit touch and go at moments as to Alonso's fate, but they both did make it to the grid. As we go on the formation lap, though, Alonso is very slow getting away, thinking that maybe there was an issue there, but it seemed to solve itself. Lance Stroll, though, it gets worse for him, because on the formation lap, he has a big spin and hits the wall. And then, from there, he's able to get it going, but then he was stuck in the gravel. And it's just like, oh my God, Lance. Because, everyone's a bit harsh on Lance, for reasons I'm sure we all are aware of. But, yeah, the spin itself, I thought, was very unlucky. It seemed like the car just wanted to spin, so it did. And of course, that could have been related to the crash from qualifying or the rebuild or whatever it might be. But then he just drove it really slowly into the gravel, beached it, and got out. It was just like, okay, we'll let you off for the spin. Just don't do anything stupid. Oh, it's too late. You've already done it. So, because of this, he was in the gravel, and they obviously have to get that car moved out before they start the race. So they abandon the start, which causes some chaos we have not yet seen the repercussions of. Because with an abandoned start, apparently in the rules, what you're supposed to do is just wait there, and the engineers will come back onto the grid, and they'll put the tyre blankets on and get us ready to go again. But some drivers didn't realise this, including Lando Norris at the front of the field, who thought it was like an extra formation lap. So he drove off, and a lot of the other cars then followed him from there. A few stopped, but then eventually everyone got going. Colapinto was one of the people who stopped, but he was also quite lucky here because he parked in the wrong grid box. And he seems to have got away with that, so lucky for him there. Max Verstappen's on the radio saying that they shouldn't go because it's an abandoned start and they should stop. Eventually, he's told to go by his engineer, and everyone does do an extra formation lap, which brings us back round to the start, where Lando Norris is then noted for a starting procedure infringement because you weren't supposed to go. Now, later on, a few other names will be added to this. Russell, Lawson, and Yuki were all also noted for that starting procedure infringement. This apparently is unprecedented. Never in F1 history has there been an abandoned start when you're not supposed to go anywhere and the entire grid is gone. But something that needs to happen here because this could have been massively unsafe. We have a car off and people recovering it, including with like a crane or a JCB out there, and then we have cars going on the track without a safety car doing another formation lap. So I feel there should and hopefully will be repercussions for this. What it is, I don't know. Honestly, I feel it might be a 5-second penalty for Norris, Russell, Lawson and Yuki because they were the names that were mentioned from there. So we could see that coming their way. I think that's the way I expect it to go. But we will wait and see. And of course, this will be followed by some kind of clarification on the rules and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, just chaos before the race has even properly begun. Just utter madness. Then the race actually begins proper, and immediately Lando loses the lead to George Russell, who was able to take the lead from him into turn 1. Further along the lap, Sergio Perez spins just by himself but is able to continue. The big gainer though, Max Verstappen, from P17 to P10 in just one lap. Some incredible driving from Max Verstappen to start this race. Then he just keeps on going. On lap 5 he's past Gasly for P9. Lap 6 he's past Alonso for P8. Further down, Ollie Behrman gets a 10-second penalty for causing a collision with Colapinto. I felt very unfair. Yes, he did cause a collision, but Colapinto seemed to be fine. You know, Ollie Behrman tapped Colapinto, and Ollie Behrman spun. Colapinto, I don't even know he noticed he was hit, but Behrman got a penalty for that nonetheless. Now, Max Verstappen all over the back of Oscar Piastri here on lap 9, and on the start of lap 10, he just goes, you know what, I'm going to take this. And from so far back, in wet conditions, pulls off a beautiful dive bomb into turn 1, having the utmost confidence not only in the car but in himself and his understanding of the weather and the track condition to pull off that move into turn 1, because that could have been a story for the entire race. You know, Lando's in P2 at this point. McLaren looked quick all weekend. This could have been a thing of, right, Piastri's going to keep Verstappen behind him for as long as he possibly can. But literally a lap after Verstappen is on the back of Piastri, he's in front of him because of this insane move there. Verstappen on a mission today, and a lap later he's past Liam Lawson for P6. Liam Lawson treating Max Verstappen very differently to how he treats Sergio Perez. Further down the field, Lewis Hamilton's not been having a good weekend at all, apart from, of course, driving Ayrton Senna's 1990 McLaren, and his race eventually went okay, but at this point was going very, very badly. His teammate was leading the race, and he was off the track on the penultimate corner. Colapinto catches up the back of him and overtakes him into P1, pushing Lewis Hamilton back down to P12. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc is struggling massively on his tyres as Verstappen closes in on him. We get a notification here to say the starting procedure infringement will be sorted after the race. Now, I don't like this. I don't like the whole thing of, you know, in a few hours' time, we'll go, oh, this is what the actual finishing is. I can kind of understand it for this because it is so unprecedented. It's never happened before. So I kind of understand why they're doing it, and also with a race like this where it was so wet and so much stuff was happening, it's better for the stewards to be keeping a close eye on what's actually happening in the race as we see it right now, rather than looking over and deciding a penalty for a starting procedure infringement. So yeah, I can kind of understand where they're coming from at that point. But yeah, it's better to keep an eye on the race. And on the race right now, there was a big old battle for third place. Third place was currently occupied by Yuki Tsunoda. Then Ocon was behind him, Leclerc behind him, and Verstappen behind him. All four cars about under 3 or 4 seconds between all of them. This great train here, which lasted for quite a bit at the start of this race. Just all of them just looking at the four of them, waiting for them to make mistakes, looking at the weather forecast. The weather is reporting heavier rain coming in. Everyone's going, right, do we stick on the inters? Do we go to the full wets? What's going to happen from here? Further down again, Lewis Hamilton really struggling again at this point, as Sainz and Behrman pass him in 2 consecutive laps down to P15 on lap 19. Again, his teammate George Russell leading the race at this point. Max Verstappen now looks for an opportunity on Charles Leclerc, but some great driving from Leclerc to block it on lap 22. Sainz locks up and loses places to both Behrman and Hamilton. And now on lap 25 is where Leclerc's race fell apart because he decided to go to the pits. And the whole discussion in terms of like the commentary and everything else at this point was, right, are we pitting? Are we staying out on the inters? Or are we pitting for the full wets? What are we going to do? Then we see Leclerc, who's in this lovely little battle for P3. Yuki, Ocon, Leclerc, Verstappen. We see him peel off into the pits. We go, right, what's he going to do? Is it going to be inters? Is it going to be full wets? What's it going to be? And he goes, brand new inters. And it's just like, okay, we've got heavier rain coming. It's already in a bad place. And now you've dropped down into this weird little battle of Hamilton and Behrman and Sainz. And from there, Leclerc was never really in contention for those top spots again. This moment here completely destroying his race. Meanwhile, Piastri hit a dive bomb on Lawson, which went all kinds of wrong. Lawson massively spinning out and losing 3 places. Piastri would get a penalty for this later on. Then we cut to Nico Hülkenberg, who is out of the race, and just before the VSC can come out for this, Ocon gets past Yuki Tsunoda for P3 on lap 28. As I said, the VSC comes out for Hülkenberg. We get a storm in the pits now. Piastri, Alonso, Behrman, Hamilton, Perez, they all pit. Perez is the only one at this point to go to the full wet tyres, everyone else going for fresh inters. Hülkenberg, though, has started moving again and is back in the race. The VSC ends as Russell and Norris come into the pit, so they do not get the benefit of the virtual safety car during that pit stop, meaning that the new leader of the race is Esteban Ocon, because Yuki Tsunoda has also taken to the pits for the full wet tyres. So it is now Ocon leading the race from Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, we now get a 10-second penalty for Oscar Piastri for causing that collision with Liam Lawson. And now the rain is coming down so heavily. It was really, really bad. Everyone really tentative driving around at this point, especially George Russell, who is still in front of Lando up until this point, where he's just going so slowly. Lando just goes straight past him. Russell doesn't even try to defend. Lando feels a lot more comfortable and confident than Russell does, which is to be expected because the Mercedes has been a handful all weekend, and Lando just goes right past him from there. This is when a safety car comes out, just due to the conditions. It was so bad they brought out a safety car. Our top 10 at this point behind the safety car was Ocon in first, then Verstappen, then Gasly. Norris was 4th on fresh inters, Russell 5th on fresh inters, Yuki in 6th on full wets, Leclerc in 7th, Piastri in 8th, Alonso 9th, Lawson in 10th on the full wet tyres. This is when we get a new investigation going under at the moment between Russell and Hamilton, because they both adjusted the tyre pressures on the car whilst the tyres were still on the car during that moment in between the 2 formation laps. Apparently the rule is you got to take the tyres off the car. They didn't do that. They're under investigation. That's another thing that could come back and haunt them at the end of this race. So Russell, as we sit here right now, is currently under investigation for 2 different things. So who knows where he's going to finish in this race by the end of all of this. But behind the safety car, it gets even worse because Colapinto has a huge crash, and this brings out a red flag pretty quickly from there. He is out of the race. Behind the red flag, of course, everyone can change to new tyres. This is massively beneficial to Ocon, Verstappen, Gasly, really beneficial to them. The one it's not beneficial for is Hülkenberg, because whilst the red flag is out, he learns that he's been disqualified from the race. So if we cast our minds back to that virtual safety car that was caused by him, he was stuck. He got assistance from the marshals. They pushed him off the grate he was stuck on, and he carried on with the race. It's illegal to get outside help to make you carry on in the race. It's a rule I haven't seen be in action for a very long time. It used to be a big thing in the 80s and 90s. You'd see that rule pulled out basically every week, but we haven't seen it in a long time. Nico Hülkenberg gets a black flag and is disqualified from the race during the race. That's the first time in a very long time we've seen that happen. And now, the red flag comes to an end and we have a rolling start. There's a bit of confusion, but I don't know if it was just the Sky team or the world, because the Sky team had kind of led us to believe that we were going to have a few laps behind the safety car before the rolling start, but there was only one. Now, Carlos Sainz, behind the safety car, is on the radio going, "Guys, you haven't put new tyres on my car. These are old intermediate tyres." To which he gets no response. I'm sure that won't go wrong in any way. Meanwhile, where are we? I've lost my place on my notes here entirely. Ollie Behrman is off further back down the grid. And then going into turn 1, the turn 4 this is now, Lando Norris goes off at this point, leaves the door totally open for Russell, comes back on. I thought, unsafe rejoin of the track, never noted. But Russell at this point is side by side with Norris, and Russell's able to get past him, get that position back. Leclerc goes off, but he doesn't lose a place. He was fine from there. And at this point, Esteban Ocon was flying. And I mentioned in qualifying, ever since the first drops of rain landed on the track, Ocon has been quick, because he wasn't great in the sprint. I think he was 19th in sprint qualifying and then didn't do too much in the race itself. But ever since it started raining, since Q1, Ocon has been on it. He's been fantastic. And at this point, he's leading the race. Not just leading, he's built up a 3-second gap to Max Verstappen in the matter of like a few laps. So Ocon doing fantastic here. Meanwhile, Ollie Behrman has a huge spin, hits the wall, but is able to keep on going. That's on lap 37. But someone else has a huge spin, and that's Carlos Sainz. He cannot keep on going. Yeah, he just completely lost it for Sainz, probably due to the old intermediate tyres that he was given. But yeah, he was in the wall and out of the race. Safety car comes out. The safety car ends on lap 43 of 69, and this is when, in one corner, the championship was decided. It's not decided yet, but when we look back in the annals of history, we can point to turn 1 on lap 43 of the Brazilian Grand Prix of 2024 to say that's when the championship was decided, because Max Verstappen dives down the inside of Ocon and takes the lead. Meanwhile, his championship rival Lando Norris doesn't make the corner, goes completely off, and drops down to 7th. There's levels to this game. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso is off the track, and Lando Norris is now behind Piastri, but for the second time this weekend, Piastri is told to swap positions and gives Lando P6 on lap 46 of 69. And now Max Verstappen in the lead and is just looking to prove a point. And he just sets fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap. He just builds a huge gap over Esteban Ocon in second place and just the entire rest of the grid. Further back, Oscar Piastri, who hasn't had a great race at all, goes off again, is now under a lot of pressure from Yuki Tsunoda, was able to keep that place. We get a rerun of the Perez-Lawson battle here from Mexico. It's carried through to Brazil. Lawson properly elbows out and keeps Perez behind. A lap later, Perez goes a bit wide and Hamilton goes, thank you very much, and is up into the top 10 of this race. And at this point, Max again, you're setting fastest lap after fastest lap, leading this race with ease, making it look easy. But David Croft has something to say, and we all have to hear it because I don't know how to turn him off. He says, Max Verstappen refuses to change his driving style and his overtaking style, and this is a bad thing. This is during a race where Max Verstappen started 17th and fought through the field to lead the race, is currently leading by 15 seconds in the third fastest car in extremely difficult conditions. David Croft decides now's the time for me to say Max Verstappen needs to change his driving style. In a race where he went from 17th to 10th in one lap doing overtakes, and then has fought his way through the field and has now mastered the rain and is going miles faster than everyone, David Croft goes, yeah, but he never changed his driving style. David Croft, if you're watching, and I know you are, for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, just wear a t-shirt that says, I hate Max Verstappen, because that would be less obvious than what you're doing here. Max Verstappen is delivering a generational drive. You know, this weekend has been full of Ayrton Senna tributes. It's 30 years since he passed away. The biggest tribute of them all was Max Verstappen's wet weather driving this weekend. It was perfect. We are seeing one of the greatest drivers of all time give one of his greatest drives of all time. And when you listen back to it, all you're going to hear is salty David Croft going, oh, but I don't like it when he sometimes is a bit aggressive. Grow up, man, and move on, because we're nearly at the end of the race. Fernando Alonso has not had a great one this weekend. He comes over the radio and he's on the radio saying that he's got back pain, really struggling with pain in his back. I've seen some clips afterwards of him trying to get out of the car, and he seems like he is really suffering, mostly due to carrying Aston Martin on his back for 2 years, but also the condition of the car and the track has not helped here this weekend. And as we cross the line, Max Verstappen takes his 8th victory of the year. It's been 10 races since he has won a race, but he is back on the top step. For me, his greatest victory of all time. 17th place to first in some of the worst weather conditions we've seen in a long time. Again, in the car that is not the fastest car. You could even argue it's the third fastest car. Absolutely incredible. Like I said before, in a weekend of tributes to Ayrton Senna, Max Verstappen's victory here in these conditions is the biggest tribute we could ever have seen. fantastic, fantastic, fantastic drive. Equally fantastic are Esteban Ocon in P2 and Pierre Gasly in P3. A double Alpine podium. Go back to Bahrain, they were the slowest cars on the grid. To come here and do that is unbelievable. Alpine, as a team, had scored 16 points all year up until this point. In this race alone, Gasly scored 15 points. They scored 33 points in total. They have leapfrogged multiple teams in the Constructors' Championship. I think they're 6th at the minute, which means that this race has earned them about £50 million worth of prize money. Unbelievable stuff from both of them. It's like easily some of their best drives ever as well. You know, Ocon has that incredible victory in Hungary in 2021. For me, this is a better drive than that by far, because that was all to do with, Bottas had the whole big crash with everyone. Hamilton got the tyre strategy wrong and kind of Ocon inherited some stuff from there. This weekend, Ocon has just been incredible. Yes, the pace has just been amazing. So yeah, for me, Ocon's best ever drive. Gasly as well, really, really good. I feel George Russell in 4th will be overlooked a little bit here, but for me as well, a fantastic drive from him. The Mercedes has been dreadful. Absolutely dreadful all weekend, and he got it on the front row and he got it 4th here. The only thing hanging over him, of course, is that starting procedure infringement and also the whole tyre pressure thing. So who knows if he will end up 4th or not. We'll have to see from there. In 5th is Charles Leclerc, an anonymous race, really. We didn't really see much of him, and I think he just kind of was just there. From that pit stop at the start, that was a big mistake for Ferrari, and then he just turned up at the end in 5th. So overall, an okay weekend for Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris goes from pole to 6th place, and he's got no one to blame but himself. You could look at the virtual safety car ending at the wrong time at the start with the pit stop and go, yeah, that's where he lost positions to the likes of Verstappen, Ocon and Gasly. But then, he was in front of Russell and he went off at turn 4 and let Russell go by. Then, at the restart, when Max took the lead, I think he was 4th, and he just went off the track and dropped down to 7th. Any time he massively lost places was all on him. That was him this weekend. You can't say, oh yeah, but the conditions, because the conditions were the same for everyone. Lando Norris dropped the ball this weekend and only finished 6th from starting on pole. In a weekend, let's not forget, Max Verstappen came into this in the 3rd fastest car with a 5-place grid penalty. This should have been an easy points gain for Lando Norris, and now we're in a position where next time out in Las Vegas, from my dodgy maths, I think it is if Max Verstappen beats Lando Norris by 5 points, the championship is over. So, a bad weekend for Norris in the championship hunt. Yuki Tsunoda in 7th place, started great, was in that 3rd place for a lot of the start of this race, and I think moving to the wets was the wrong idea at that point. Then, there was the red flag and all that kind of stuff. Then just from there kind of went backwards. Not much pace in the second half of the race, but still, decent points for the RB. If you told them before the start of the weekend you're going to finish 7th, I think they would be very happy with that. So overall, a net positive for Yuki Tsunoda. Oscar Piastri was in 8th. Just nothing. All weekend. I mean, I think he finished on the track in 7th and had that 10-second penalty for him and Lawson. But apart, even without that penalty, he was just nowhere all weekend. Messed it up in qualifying, locking up into turn 1. And then in the race itself, nothing. Liam Lawson finishes in 9th place. A good one for him at the end. A lot of pressure on him at the end from both Hamilton and Perez, but managed to keep the position. Lewis Hamilton actually finishes 10th, but what was a decent recovery, because my God, he's looked dreadful all weekend. Every session he's looked bad. But the second half of the race, he managed to kind of pull it out and get a good recovery and get at least 1 point for himself and the Mercedes team. Sergio Perez finishes in 11th. I mean, he span at the start. From there, had some okay overtakes, but overall, comes away with nothing. Ollie Behrman was 12th. He struggled quite a bit today. But you know what? This is his 3rd ever F1 race. He is the replacement driver for Kevin Magnussen. He's dropped in these random places now. And this was tricky stuff. So overall, he beat 3 guys on the track. I think he can walk away from this going, you know what, he tried his best. and he finished the race. And in a way, that's an achievement in itself for Ollie Behrman there. Valtteri Bottas in 13th place. Fantastic. Valtteri Bottas, incredible weekend. Again, in a Sauber, so no one will pay any attention, but that was incredible from Valtteri Bottas. Really good. Fernando Alonso has to settle for 14th place, but at one point towards the end, he went off the track and was 20 seconds behind Zhou and came back and beat him. So there's that. Zhou Guanyu was the last of the finishers in 15th place. Then we have a DNF for Sainz, a DNF for Colapinto, a disqualification for Nico Hulkenberg, a did not start for Alexander Albon, and I don't know if Stroll is a DNF or a DNS, but either way, didn't actually do anything. There you go. That was the race. That was mental. So let me know what you think of that. As I said, we are back in 2 weeks' time for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And if Max Verstappen can outscore Lando Norris by 5 points, the championship will be over for 2024. In between now and then, we have a bit of a break, which means that a Friday video is on the way to your screens. If you are a member, if you're a Mansell Mustache member, you'll get it a little bit early, but there'll be a video here on Friday. And if there's any news to talk about between now and then, we'll have a news video on the Saturday. And of course, driver ratings will be out tomorrow. But man, I hope we have a few more races like that one, because that was a lot of fun. Until next time, have a good one. I'll see you later. I'm going to bed. I need to lie down. Goodbye.